Hello and welcome to GCSE English. As part of your course, we've decided to make a video which will serve as an induction to your studies, so that when you join your classes next week, you can actually just get straight into the work. So my name is Graham, and I'm going to be introducing you to some of the ideas and things to expect behind your GCSE course. So first of all, I'm going to share with you a presentation and hope that it works correctly. Here we are. So GCSE English Induction. So first of all, that's me in one of my shirts, and I am the English GCSE manager for adult education. I also teach a couple of classes, and I'm also the one who would offer most of the support work that goes along with the course. I'll talk about that a bit later on. But there's my email address and my number for texts only there. But you can get my work number from any emails I've sent you. So moving on, here's some information to welcome you to the class. So the course runs over about 30 weeks. We try to give you as many sessions as possible, but it will depend on when the exams are, and they are a little early this year. So sometimes when you find that the other classes in adult education, and if you've got kids, the kids will be off school, say at half terms, we might be actually doing our classes because we need to get in as many classes as we can before you have your exams. Please try and go to as many of those sessions as possible because every session will be packed and you will lose out and miss content if you're away. However, there are some ways of being able to claw that back because you can always try and make arrangements to go to one of our other sessions during that week. So we're running 4 sessions during a week. If you know you're going to miss yours, why not make an arrangement with your tutor to go to one of the other sessions that week? We also have the sometimes classes are videoed, so there may be a way of getting back the material and the information that you missed, particularly on our website, which I will also show you later. There will occasionally be additional sessions. That is where we put on a series of one-off lessons, which will be focused on a particular skill or a particular aspect of the GCSE to give you additional chances to learn. These will be signposted to you and you'll get invites to go to them. They're optional, but highly recommended. I do a lot of those, but then I may well also have help from a couple of the other tutors. But first of all, a couple of dates for your diary. And these are the really important dates because they're the dates for your actual exams. So you have 2 exams at the end of this course. Paper 1 this year, in 2024, paper 1 will be on the 23rd of May, and paper 2 will be on the 6th of June. Both of them are morning exams, so we will want you to be there before 9 o'clock, ready for a 9 o'clock start. So that's the 23rd of May and the 6th of June. Each of those exams is 1 hour and 45 minutes, unless you have extra time for some reason. And so you really should now make those firm dates in your diaries. Book those times and dates. If you're working, make sure you've got the morning off, because there are no alternative options for those exam days. You know, if you can't be available on the 23rd of May, you will not be able to do paper 1. And obviously, unless you've got a very, very good excuse, you won't be able to make up those marks in your exam. So please make sure you've got those dates free. So here's some information to welcome you to the class. You will be, these are expectations and other things, but you as students will be expected to study outside of class time and to complete your homework assignments. Homework, if you don't do your homework, if you don't practice your skills, if you don't get feedback on the work that you've done, um, you will find it hard to learn. That's one of the core methods of learning on this course. And the study outside the class time is absolutely essential. We estimate it to be around about 5 hours a week, because you can't just learn in the 2.5 hours that we have you in class. You need to be working on your assignments, working on your homework, and doing your study. And if you haven't got anything that's been set by your tutor, you should be reading. One of the biggest and best ways to do well on the GCSE English is to read as much as you can and as often as you can. There are particular things which are better to read than others, and your tutor will point you in the right direction. But for example, on our website, which I will introduce you to later, we do have links to classic short stories that were written in the 19th century, and those are actually really good things to be reading. So 5 hours a week, and there's no excuses, because even if you haven't got anything set, you've got your reading to do. If you have a reason to believe that you will need additional support in the classroom or the exam, and I'm talking about things like physical disabilities, learning difficulties like dyslexia, anything that you think makes the exam harder for you, please make your tutor aware as soon as possible, and we will start to put things in place to support you. Some of these things might include extra time, or enlarging your materials, or using colored filters, or maybe allowing you to use a laptop in the exam. Make sure you let your tutor know if there are any needs like that. After Christmas, around about February time, we'll be doing the exam entries. We don't enter people for exams straight away. We wait until you've been here for a term, and basically we're looking for people who have shown the appropriate level of commitment to the course. We do not enter candidates who have fallen behind in their classwork, or their homework, or people who are missing too many classes. Those people are likely to fail the exam, and we will actually have that discussion with you at that point. So I hope that doesn't include anybody who's listening to this, but we need you to show commitment, and then we'll do the entries in February. Some rules about how to behave in the classroom. I know this sounds a bit like school, a bit like do's and don'ts, but we do expect everybody to behave like an adult and to treat each other with respect. So that's show respect to your tutor and your fellow students. Don't use disrespectful language. And we have a zero policy on racism, sexism, homophobia, and transphobia, and religious intolerance, and so on. We do take those very seriously, and people will be dealt with, and ultimately people can be asked to leave the course. So be kind to each other. That's basically sums everything up I'm saying here. If you have any problems to do with the course, to do with your ability to do the course, or with the materials, please, in the first instance, talk to your tutor, or you can talk to me. You can email me, or ask to see me. But generally, keep in touch. Use email to talk to your tutor, or to talk to me, just to discuss with each other how the course is going. I know previous years people have started up a WhatsApp page for their class, so that they can discuss and talk and trade ideas with each other. That's a very good thing to do. So what is GCSE English all about? And we could go into an awful lot of detail about what the study of a language happens to be, but basically it's all about the exam. We have 30 weeks to prepare you to do these 2 examinations. So we allow the exam to dictate the shape of the course. This is the outline of what the exam includes. So your exam board is AQA, and the English language course, the English language examination consists of 2 papers, each of which are equally balanced, so 50% of the marks on both papers. They are divided, both of them, into reading and writing. So on paper 1, the reading is literature. It's about fiction. It'll be from a short story or from a novel. Probably about a page and a half. It's not a long piece of writing. You will read and then answer questions on that. And then your section B, also worth 50% of the paper, is your own writing. And in this case, it's descriptive writing, story writing. It's writing to entertain a reader, to engage a reader. Paper 2 is different because it's about non-fiction. That is, it's not about stories, it's about true life pieces of writing of various kinds. Lots of different types of writing here: letters, articles, blogs, speeches. So you get 2 pieces of non-fiction to read on your reading part of your question paper. And then when you're writing, you will be writing to put across a point of view, your point of view on the particular subject that's given to you. And that will be in the form of one of those types of writing, like a letter or an article or a blog and so on. Both of the exams last 1 hour and 45 minutes, and they are equally weighted, as I said. Now, there is also a spoken language component to the GCSE English. You notice it's not included here because it isn't worth any of the marks that go towards your GCSE grade. You have to do it as part of the course, and you will get an additional endorsement on your GCSE certificate specifically for your English, spoken English attainment. So that would be a pass, a merit, or a distinction for your spoken language. But please don't panic about that too much. We will prepare you for it. You can, if you want to, just do it one-to-one with your tutor or with me, rather than talking to the group. It will be a presentation of around about 5 minutes on a subject of your choice, something that you're familiar with and can share. It's not very exacting, and it's nothing, I know people do get stressed about having to do presentations, but if you've done functional skills, you will have already done one of these, and it's totally the same. So we will prepare for it, and we'll talk about that much more as we get closer to the day. So it won't be before Christmas, so just relax and focus on the reading and writing. So the structure of the exams, I've more or less covered all this. You've got the 2 papers, the fiction and non-fiction, the speaking and listening that isn't included in the grade. You have your fiction paper, 4 questions based on 1 text, and your paper and your piece of creative writing, and your paper 2, which is non-fiction, 4 questions based on 2 texts, which includes comparing the 2. And your section B there is writing your own interesting, engrossing, argumentative writing. The writing is worth 50% of all the marks in the exam. The reading is worth 50%. So reading and writing are equally balanced. So what are the skills that we have to teach you and that you will have to do for the exam? One of the main ones is reading for meaning. And you will be reading for meaning different types of text. You will be analyzing language. That's about taking the words from the text, the words and phrases that the writer has used, and explaining why the writer has used those words, what they mean, and what their effects are on the reader. How has the writer achieved his or her effects? By explaining what the words mean. It's a bit like being a detective, taking a few words and then explaining what and why and how the writer has communicated to the reader using those choices of words. Similarly, analyzing structure is about doing the same, but this time not with the words, but with the way the writing is put down onto the paper, its shape, the order in which it is put together, the way that the paragraphs are held together by meaning. It's looking at the structure and what the effect of that is on the reader and on the way that the writer is communicating with the readers. And then you are going to be writing in your second half of each of your papers. You're going to be writing creatively and entertainingly and with technical accuracy. The technical accuracy bit people do get worried about, but it's only worth 16 marks in total out of 80 on each of the papers. That includes spelling, punctuation, and grammar. SPAG, teacher's slang. But the spelling part of it, which a lot of people get very upset about, is only 1/5 of the technical accuracy marks. So actually, yeah, spelling is worth marks, but it's not worth very many. And there's one missing from the SPAG, and that's V for vocabulary. If you use really good, interesting words, you will get more marks, say the examiners, for using those words than you will lose if you spell them wrong. So it's wanting you to push you to using your vocabulary, not sticking to simple words that you know how to spell, actually to increase and to show off what you know. I've been talking about texts all the way through, and of course by text I don't mean this kind. Um, we're talking about basically any piece of writing that we look at in class and we analyze and we talk about, we call that a text. So on paper one, that is going to be fiction texts, and that could be short stories or a page or two from a novel. On paper two, much more varied, it's non-fiction, and it could be newspaper articles, travel writing, diary entries, speeches, blogs, reports, letters. And you are asked to read them, but also to write them as well in your own writing. So you need to know about all sorts of different forms of writing. Now, the texts that the exam board set for you actually have a time component to them. One of the texts will be from the 19th century, that's the 1800s. One will be from the 20th century, and one will be from the 21st century, so it will be quite modern and quite recent. But the oldest of the texts that you will get on your exam may well be over 200 years old. And although, of course, they were writing clear modern English in those days, it is different from the way we write English now. So there may be words and phrases that are a little difficult, a little unfamiliar. There also will be talking about a world that is now history. You know, the writer's world, and his or her reader's world actually is now way in the past. So it takes a little bit of effort, perhaps, for us to, as modern readers, to put our minds to put ourselves into the shoes of the writer and his or her readers. What would the text have meant to them? Because that writer wasn't writing for us, you know. 200 years later, he or she was writing for people who were modern and were contemporary to him. So the meanings of the texts may have faded or may have changed. What surprises us might not have surprised the original readers. So The exam does ask you to take into consideration the historical context of the piece of writing. At the very highest levels, you can get more marks for showing that you're aware of the differences in time between the texts as well. But it does mean that you should try and make yourself familiar as much as you can with what the world was like, and indeed, especially what Britain was like during the 19th century. So you can think about what you associate with the years 1800 to 1899, which was the 19th century, and the things that you might see on TV or have read in books or learnt at school. There are some things which stand out, and it's about getting a feeling for the era in which that text was written in. One of the things that you might say is that the 19th century is dominated by this lady, Queen Victoria, who became queen in 1837 and died in 1901. So for the majority of the 19th century, Britain was led by this strong female figure. It was called the Victorian era. Before she came to the throne, slavery in the British Empire was ended and made illegal. The slave trade was criminalized a long time before it was in America. We started to see the inventions and the technological changes that make the modern world in which we live today. Fast travel, trains were running for the first time in 1804, and by the end of the 19th century you could get around the country really quickly and cheaply by train. Flushing toilets came in the middle of the century, and who was the first person to use a flushing toilet? It was Queen Victoria, of course, and she had a gold-plated lavatory in her private home on the Isle of Wight. The telephone, 1876, connects the world in a way that is very modern. I think a lot of us would find it hard to imagine, not being able to contact people immediately, but it only becomes possible in 1876. Before then, it might have taken days to get a message to somebody and get the message back. So from the 1870s onwards, people can connect through the telephone. It takes a long time for everybody to have their own phone like we have today, but the ability to send communication at the speed of light from London to New York became a reality in the 1890s. And again, the first person to send a transatlantic phone call was Queen Victoria. She was the Empress of India and ruler of the British Empire. Now, the British Empire is a very controversial subject, and but it's important for you to understand that British people living in the 19th century and the early part of the 20th century saw themselves as being special. They saw themselves as being the main citizens of this gigantic and powerful empire, geographically the biggest empire that has ever existed. They saw Britain as being at the center of an empire that stretched from South America to India and beyond. And the subject peoples of that empire, the indigenous populations of those countries, were actually treated as if they were second or third class citizens. In some cases, they were treated horrifically. Basically, Britain, through business and military means, went around taking over other people's countries and stealing from those countries mineral wealth, gold, diamonds, and food, and so on, making this country incredibly rich at the expense of the rest of the world. So a writer working in the 19th century would have seen the idea of being British as being special and important in a way that perhaps writers today wouldn't. The assumptions they would make about the rights and the attitudes of British people would have been very different to maybe a century later. And it's worth understanding that maybe what we think of America today was Britain back in the 19th century. And alongside that great power and wealth, there was terrible poverty in Britain in the 19th century. And remember, people who lived in poverty didn't have any welfare state to provide for them. There was no national health service, there was no dole, there was no social security. You might get some charity, but there was no help given by governments. And many people lived in terrible conditions. Diseases were rife. And that was the flip side of all the power of the British Empire, that actually ordinary working class, poor British people might be starving in the same cities. So that's just a very quick idea. The way to get really into this is to read about the 19th century, watch films and TV shows about Victorian era, lots of stuff on YouTube, just to get a feel for it. This isn't a history course. You don't have to be experts. It's just to say that when you're reading a 19th century text, you can put that little bit of um, understanding that this was something that was written in a very different context to a modern piece of writing, and maybe try and think, what would the original readers have felt about that text? How would they have been affected by the words and phrases in it? And then compare that to how you are as a 21st century reader. Extra marks available for that sort of subtlety. Now, here's something that a lot of students worry about, and that's the terminology, the specialist jargon that's involved in looking at language in the exams. And so the words which are on your on the page now are some of these key words that might be involved in a glossary of terminology words, literary criticism words. Techniques, that's what they are, for using language to create effects on the reader. A metaphor, for example, is a comparison that explains what you're trying to describe in terms of something else. For example, a soldier roaring into battle. The word roaring is associated with lions, therefore the writer is trying to make us understand that the soldier was as brave and fierce as a lion. And that's a metaphor. Now, you can actually explain that without using the word metaphor. And as long as you can do that, taking the idea that the word bang is actually mimicking the sound of the gun as it fires, it makes the reader hear the gun in their imagination. You don't have to use the word onomatopoeia, which is what it means. There are marks available for correctly identifying language features, explaining them, and maybe using a technical term. But only one or two across the whole of the exam. So don't get overly worried about learning loads and loads of these technical terms. If you know one or two of them and you can drop one or, maybe one into your language question, then you've done enough. So don't worry about them as long as you understand what the concepts are and you can explain them in your own words. Now, we have for a number of years used textbooks on our GCSE courses, and these textbooks are very good. And I would normally have ordered a whole lot of them for you to buy at a reduced rate. Unfortunately, I was told only in July that these books have been discontinued. They are out of print, and the publishers didn't have any left. So the bad news is that we are still asking you to try and get hold of these books, but it might be a little more difficult than it was. I do have a box of books, a number of brand shiny new ones, and the brand new ones would be available to you at a discounted price of £19.20. They were actually £25 when they came out. We also have a couple of second-hand copies at the moment. More second-hand copies might come in from last year's students. If they do, then they're going to be £5, £10, depending on the condition of those books. Those are going to be available from the reception at Southfield's Old School, which is one of our main headquarters for adult education. You can buy them with cash or bank cards, credit cards, but just make sure before you set out that you telephone the Southfields to make sure that they're going to be open, because sometimes there's nobody on reception. So that's something that you can do in order to get the books until they're all gone, and it's just going to be first come, first serve. If you're very lucky, you might get much cheaper copies online, and I think most of you are going to have to go online to find your books. Amazon. This is a screenshot from Amazon. Amazon at the moment, this was yesterday, they had 11 used copies from £10.73 on upwards. So going on Amazon, going on any of the bookseller websites, doing a Google search for the book and seeing what comes up, that's probably one of the best ways to find your books. You need to make sure that you are looking for the right book. I will be sending out an email about this, by the way. So there are two books. The blue one with result written on it, is for grades 1 to 5. And remember, your grades have now replaced the A, B, C, D, E grading system. It is now the case that level 9, grade 9, is the highest. That is higher than the old A star. And then it goes down to 1, which nobody wants. So it is grade 4, which is the minimum, which we would call a pass. So grade 4 is the old grade C. So if you're in a foundation class, it's this book you need, the one with result written on it. And if you're in a higher class, you need this one for grades 5 to 9, which has the word success written on it, and is mostly orange. So the mostly blue one for foundation, the mostly orange one for higher. Make sure you get the right one. If you will struggle to pay for these books, please get in touch with me as soon as you can, or ask your tutor to get in touch with me, and we will try and do something about that. I don't want anybody not having a book because they can't afford a book. It's going to be bad enough that we get people who can't get a book because they can't find one, but please let me know if you're going to struggle. There are also out there ebooks and Kindle versions of the textbook. So as long as you've got a type of access to these to this book, it'll be better for you. They're great revision tools, and the teachers do work with them as well in the class. Shop around and let us know if you're having real problems. As I'm getting to the end of this, I'd like to introduce to you the fact that we have a website, or a number of websites which are associated with the course to help you and to give you access to the learning materials that we use in the classes. If you miss a class, for example, you might be able to get hold of the handouts and the presentations that which were used in the class that you missed. So that gives you some help in catching up. There are also things on there which are not to do with specific classes, so there are other things to see and do. You'll also find that there are videos to watch, which might have been videos of lessons, and they may be dealing with a particular question or a particular skill. So there's plenty to get into, and they're really good value. Your tutor will give you, possibly not in the first lesson, but they will give you your own personal login and password, and you use this then to access the web page associated with your class. So if I just come out of that for a second. And I'll show you the website. So I have to unshare that and then share again. Different. Here we go. So this is the website. It's called Covlearn, and whichever class you're doing, whichever course you're doing with adult education, should have its own Covlearn page. And the first time that you log in, you go to log in up there, top there, and you use your username, which is that's my username, and then the password that you've been given, which you should keep to yourself. You'll then be able to access the courses. Oh, what's happened? I've got an invalid. There we go. So at the top along this line of icons is my courses, and under my courses will be the ones that you are actually registered for. So your GCSE course should be on here. If you're doing any other courses, they might be on here as well. So for the GCSE webpage, there is one for higher, which is GCSE English. That's the original one. There's one for foundation, and there's one for intensive, which is another course that I do after Christmas. So if we go to the higher one, now the first time that you log in, you will to your course, you'll be asked to enter a key code, which is only going to be given out to people who are registered to that course. So you get your key code from your tutor, but you'll never be asked for the key code again. So you've got information like my email address and the tutor's email address. You've got the dates of the exams, which at the moment are the wrong ones. General information. Here are the catch-up videos, which we used from last year, but we'll probably keep on there for people to use because they'll still be useful. And then you get a section for each of the weeks of the course. There'll be a presentation, the materials, and other bits and pieces. So if I look at the materials for week 1, you can see that these are some of the things that the tutor might be looking at. This would allow you to look at the materials or download and print a copy of something. Maybe you've lost your handout or you missed the class. It'll be there. But further down, there's also more general things. So practice papers, information about the presentation, examples of people doing their presentations, and bits and pieces that you might find interesting, the openings to stories, how to write good in openings. And this is what I was talking about earlier, classic short stories. Now, most of these classic short stories, and they are all wonderful stories, were written in the 19th century. So reading a lot of, trying to read a lot of 19th century text will help you with that 19th century question, because you'll get used to the way they wrote, the slight differences in style, the longer sentences, the longer paragraphs, the maybe you'll pick up some words and phrases that are new to you. As well as, if you read some of those, you'll be reading some of the greatest pieces of fiction ever written. So there's a lot of good stuff there, and more links down there. Revision links, and here's stuff about punctuation. Punctuation is very important. It gives you, you can lose marks for using poor punctuation on your writing. And here's some links to exercises about key bits of punctuation. So there's lots of good stuff there to keep you busy. It's another thing, you can always have a look through some of those things during your 5 hours if you haven't quite filled your 5 hours of extra study. So I'll unshare that now and go back to my my presentation. So finally, I have some homework for you. Attached to the email that you received the link for this video on, you'll also find a couple of pieces of material. One is a getting to know you worksheet, which will help your tutor to get to know who you are, your background, anything you want to share with them, and a punctuation self-check sheet, and that's there to help identify what you're confident in with your punctuation and what maybe you need to work on. And don't worry about it, because we're looking for gaps so that we know what will be helpful for the tutor maybe to pick up. We don't have a lot of time on the GCSE course to deal with basic skills, but if there's something that a lot of people need, like how to use commas, how to use semicolons, those are very important for writing, then we will try and pick up on that for you, or at least steer you towards what you need in order to help yourself. So I'm going to ask you to fill those in before your first session with your tutor. Finally, I've mentioned several times, if you miss a class, well, if you do miss a class, be aware that there are 4 GCSE classes going on every week. If you're going to miss your class, maybe you could attend one of the others that week. Maybe there's a video of a previous one of those classes that you could watch. And if all else fails, you could at least look at the presentation, look at the material, and try it for yourself. We want you to engage as much as you possibly can with the course. Do extra writing, do extra reading, do that research on the 19th century, talk about it, share it, be engaged, ask questions. That's what a really successful student is going to be doing. So, and I hope that you all are going to be very successful students. So thank you for watching the video. May you have a great time on the course. I will see you around if I'm not actually teaching you, and goodbye.